Welcome to the south of France and Nice, the spectacular backdrop for the penultimate act of the 2013 Extreme Sailing Series. It's day 3 and 8 teams featuring some of the world's best sailors are battling it out on the water in state-of-the-art 40-foot catamarans. Thousands of people are gathering down here onto the promenade to watch the action up close and personal. Yesterday saw some breezy conditions which meant the action was fast and furious. But to get you up to speed, let's have a look back at yesterday's racing.
Yesterday here in Nice at the Extreme Sailing Series, things got off to a slow start. As the city began its day, things were calm, deceptively calm. The wind was on its way.
Quite a big forecast, 20 knots, with gusts to 25 knots and possibly to 30 knots. But the biggest factor here are the big waves with seas to 2 meters. It's quite dangerous.
It's quite challenging on the Extreme 40, and we try and hang on out there but still be pushing hard to make a good result.
For us, probably just going to be about just looking after the boat really, and yeah, yesterday we did that. We were probably a little bit over cautious, so today we might try and push it a little bit harder, but yeah, still in the back of our minds we want to keep this in one piece going into the weekend.
Is Alingi from Switzerland with 140. Joined on 3rd place, it's Red Bull Sailing Team and Real Team in 4th place. China Spirit, SAP, All for One and GAC Pindar make up the rest of the leaderboard. So it's a beautiful day here. The breeze has been great for us. Not the conditions that we saw yesterday, but still enough wind to get round the racecourse. And speaking of the racecourse, let's have a look and see what courses the boats are sailing at the moment. I'm joined by Nick Maloney. Nick, what's the course?
Between the red and black conical marks up near the committee boat. Then the boats will reach across to a yellow mark, which they'll pass on the leave it to their port hand side. Then down to 2 white triangular gates, which they'll have the option to choose whichever one they want. And then up to the green mark to starboard, and then finishing back in front of the VIP tent between the 2 black marks.
Thank you very much, Nick Maloney. Well, we haven't got long until the start of the race. The clock is counting down. Just 20 seconds we make it. And I can tell you there's been some upset already out on the racecourse. It's the French team, All for One, who've had a cracking day this afternoon. As the invitational team, it's not what you would expect. But here you go. Here is the start of the race. SAP, are they going to be over the start line early? The line was clear. Nick Maloney, tell us what you see out there.
Well, it looks like SAP Extreme have got a pretty good start where they are, just up near the committee boat, just a couple of boat lengths down the line. Red Bull also getting their nose clear air. They'll look very comfortable coming into this first mark, and they have right away on that mark. So my money's on them right now, Red Bull, to do well into this first mark.
These reaching starts are so difficult, especially with your time and distance. We've really seen some people misjudge it here today so far.
Absolutely. It's difficult for 2 principal reasons. Time on distance to hit the start line as fast as you possibly can as the gun goes, and also to maintain some form of clear air for the boats. Like Red Bull right now is really at risk of her wind being stolen by SAP Extreme. So it's a very difficult choice as to where you position the boat on the start line, and also you know how to maintain some good speed into the start and hit that start line as the gun goes with the maximum amount of pace.
So we've got SAP Extreme Sailing Team and Red Bull Sailing Team around that reaching mark first. They're coming downwind now towards the bottom gate. It's an early jibe from Red Bull Sailing Team. Interesting split here. What are we seeing on the left and right, Nick?
Well, a very difficult manoeuvre there for Red Bull. They've jibed into a cloud of broken air by the boats that are still approaching the mark, whereas SAP Extreme is extended away in clear air, always drawing, good boat speed. Very difficult manoeuvre for all of the boats that have jibed early at that mark, but they feel quite strongly that that is the favoured mark to the course jibe to the next mark.
Okay, let's see. You can see how light it is in the middle of the course. We can see on the SAP analytics that it's SAP Extreme Sailing Team who are leading the charge at the moment in leg 2. Remember, with the gate, they're allowed to choose either one of the 2 marks. as long as they sail inside out, leaving the right mark on the right-hand side of the boat or the left mark on the left-hand side of the boat. So currently seeing pictures of GAC Pindar on the far right-hand side, the Wave Muscat in the middle, and Red Bull Sailing Team on the far left-hand side. A difficult morning for the Wave Muscat, Nick. Hasn't been so good for them. They really need to try and finish ahead of Alinghi, and Alinghi doing really well to close that gap.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit yesterday afternoon. They had such great momentum all the way through the day yesterday, and it doesn't take much to really upset or break that rhythm. And today it looks like that the Wave is struggling to find that rhythm that they did have yesterday, which is opening the door and creating an opportunity for Alinghi to chip away at that points table and close that gap between the two. So, yeah, really interesting the way the tables turn as we see Team SAP Extreme now choosing that left-hand gate on the way downwind and rounding with a really nice and sizable lead here.
It's very different conditions to what we saw yesterday, and that gear change is so hard for the teams, isn't it? Yesterday we had
split here in the fleet as we see Team SAP Extreme just working their way across the right-hand side of the course, and the real team leading the fleet out over the left-hand side of the course. From our vantage point here on shore, it looks to me as though there is a bit more breeze over on the left-hand side of the course, so this could be interesting coming into the top mark. But I still believe that SAP Extreme still has a very predominant position in this race so far.
So currently we are looking at the Wave Muscat, high octane stuff going on board them. Lee McMillan screaming to try and get a penalty on someone there at the bottom mark as he rolls into attack. It is getting to crunch time now with these teams. They really are running out of time to try and claim that top spot. Lee McMillan, obviously the 2012 defending champion of the Extreme Sailing Series. Can he do the same this year? But it's interesting out on the racecourse, Nick. It's looking very soft. The breeze is lightening all the time. And we've seen some big gains on both the far extreme right and the far extreme left. But in the middle, it hasn't played so well.
No, we are making a continual comparison to the diversity that we're seeing here in Nice. Yesterday was just so full on for the sailors, and you know, talking to the guys this morning before they left the dock and looking at a lot lighter day today where it becomes more a mental game over the physical game, the guys are actually quite relieved. I was quite surprised as how yesterday drained them physically, and they were really looking forward to today being lighter after yesterday being such a battle physically.
So SAP Extreme Sailing Team doing a great job in this race, holding on to their lead at the moment. Our analytics saying that Alinghi are currently in second place, which is extraordinary because in that last leg going down to the gate, they look like they're in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. One of the things we are seeing as this, as we enter into the deeper afternoon period here in Nice, is the wind is actually starting to shift. This is one location where the wind is actually generally quite steady in direction, and now we're starting to see some significant wind shifts. So, you know, we do stand to see a lot of gains and losses across this fleet as the guys play this slow motion chess.
So SAP rounding the top mark in the first position. You can see them behind GAC Pindar and Real Team unfurling their Jenica. This is a good solid performance from them. They've had a mixed regatta so far here in Nice. They had big gear failure on day one after the big breeze sent them into a nosedive and broke their bowsprit. So good recovery from them. And Red Bull Sailing Team look to have come from nowhere, overtaken Alinghi, and are going to round this top mark in second place.
Very commanding lead here for Team SAP Extreme. They're a long, long way ahead.
Performance of the day so far for me, apart from the French, has to be Red Bull. They've done a really good job in the last couple of races, and it's nice to see Roman Agara, as we said yesterday, continually getting those higher spots. We just haven't quite seen them gel so far this series.
Yeah, and we discussed it yesterday. They did really well in that stronger wind yesterday. I think because they have such good, you know, a good rhythm with the boat, having been in the class for a long time. But their speciality really is the light air stuff, particularly when it gets a little bit bumpy, come out on top.
Speaking to Morgan Larson, the skipper of Alinghi, this morning, I asked him what he felt he needed to do going into the final race in Brazil, and he was quite happy by only being a point behind the Wave Muscat. He felt that that was a manageable thing to overhaul, but he said should that lead that the Wave have grow to 3, maybe 4 points, then that's dangerous territory for them.
Absolutely. When it comes down to that final race series for the overall point trophy, I disagree a little bit with him. You know, to be honest, I really feel like his time's now, and his fight for the overall victory doesn't start in Brazil. It starts right here today. So, yeah, and I think deep down he probably knows that. But yeah,
putting on a brave face, perhaps.
I don't know if anyone really wants to go into the final series behind. You really want to feel strong, and you don't want to be on the back foot. As we see SAP here coming down to the finish in what will be a really confidence-building victory for these guys. That very from the start.
Yeah. Yes, Graham Hansen and Rasmus Kostner representing Denmark here for SAP Extreme Sailing Team, taking the victory in race 19 here in Nice. Fantastic stuff from them. They really did extend that lead. Amazing.
I really like these guys. You know, they finish and they show emotion. They punch the sky. We can still see them now. They're handshaking, patting each other on the back, and you know, that's what it's all about. They're super stoked that they get, you know, whenever they have a good race, and not afraid to show it.
No, even after their pretty bad first day when they had all that gear failure, they missed 3 races, which definitely puts you on the back foot here. You know, they were still very buoyant and looking forward to getting out there. You know, it would have been very easy for them to be a bit down, a bit miserable, but no, they just love being here and racing. It's so good to see. So Roman Agara now coming down to the finish line. A great day, as I said, from him. You know, you spotted it, Nick. You said he was a good light air specialist, and he's really showing it now. A great team on board, coming across in 2nd place. That will help. There's a good old battle, a good old ding-dong going on between Red Bull Sailing Team and SAP Extreme Sailing Team. I think they're currently tied on points in this event for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see who claims the final podium spot.
You know, we talked yesterday about there's only one winner, but that whole podium, you know, can sort of left the dock. So it's not as straightforward as it appears here in terms of boat speed between Alinghi, say, and the Wave or Red Bull.
So a very close finish here between GAC Pindar and the local team, All for One. We'll wait for confirmation to see who squeezed in ahead of who there. I think it may well have just been GAC Pindar, but we will see. And Phil Robertson on China Spirit coming in 7th place. And Jerome Clerc on board Real Team coming in and taking 8th place. But an interesting day so far for the first club by All for One, the invitational team here from France, supported by Land Rover. It's very tough for these invitational teams to come in here and take on some of the teams that have been so well entrenched in the series for so long. It's not easy for them.
I think it's an incredible ask, and we see it at every event. And you know, guys that are just basically thrown into a new class in a lot of cases, and a new boat, really unfamiliar territory. One thing that we really try and work on is try and find some continuity. Whenever these teams come about, we encourage them to just go searching for guys that they know have had experience in the class before, because the transition's enormous, and you know, fortunately, everybody that does come into this class is at such a high standard, they work it out quite quickly. And most of the boats that do come here, they do take races off, you know, the more established teams. But still, to get an overall high-end result, it's really difficult ask for these guys.
Okay, well, having finished race 19 now, let's have a look at the results and see how the standings look. Still at the top of the table, it's the Wave Muscat with 161 points. Closing the gap, but not quite enough, it's Alinghi with 147 points. Red Bull Sailing Team, 134 points. Real Team, 128. China Spirit and SAP Extreme Sailing Team, just 1 point between them. Then the first club, All for One, still very much in the mix. And GAC Pindar at the bottom of the table on 82 points. So that was race 19 so far here in Nice, and conditions getting lighter all the time, Nick.
Yeah, it looks like it is just continuing to diminish here, and and that's just going to make it more and more difficult. We can still see there's a little bit of sea state, which is really unsettling the boat, making it hard to trim the sails, etc. So it's just not easy. It's actually getting a little sloppy for the guys, and even strategically and tactically, sometimes in these conditions you can't execute your plan because a bad set of waves might come and knock all the wind out of your sails, etc. So yeah, quite frustrating, I would say, the conditions for the guys now.
Well, we have got 8 teams out on the water, some of the best sailors from around the world. They're struggling with the change in conditions from yesterday, but in case you want to see who's been on form so far this year in the Extreme Sailing Series, have a look at our form guide.
This season, the Extreme Sailing Series has delivered stadium racing in Asia and Europe. We're now at the penultimate event, but some things on the tour will never change. Racing is very close. Event wins are never decided until the end of competitions, often not until the final moments of the final race. 8 teams arrive here in Nice, but who's going to walk away from France as winners of the French round of the Extreme Sailing Series? This is the lineup. Real Team are brand new for 2013. A Swiss outfit with experience in multi-hulls, where they excelled on the lakes of their home nation. And they've made an impression straight away. They reached the podium in Act 5 Porto, with Frenchman Pierre Pennec at the helm. Here in Nice he's back, and looking to do the same in front of his home crowd. Former America's Cup winners have won this tour before, and right now are just 1 point off the overall lead. Consistent, calm under pressure and fast, for many favourites to win here in France. Austria's Red Bull sailing team are 3rd overall coming into Nice. There's 2 double Olympic gold medalists on board, with any finish in the top half of the fleet, as they get to grips with this fast-paced format.
So that is who's looking good currently in the 2013 Extreme Sailing Series. Meanwhile, we're here in Nice and about to get race 20 underway. We are in a start sequence, just under 4 minutes to go until the start of the race. Conditions today very different to what we've seen over the last couple of days. We went from big breeze, big seas, to today it is light and it's pretty flat out there. So a big change of gear for these guys as they get used to sailing in these lighter breezes. And that's what we've seen traditionally here in Nice, a lot lighter conditions. Yesterday, we were all a bit flummoxed by the big breeze, and I think the sailors were too. We've got an interesting course out on the water, just taking place just off the beach. I'm Hannah White. I'm joined here by Nick Maloney. Nick, just talk us through the course that we're seeing in front of us here at the moment.
Well, the course is a bit of a take on an America's Cup course, and what we're seeing now with a reaching start. The start is between the red and black conic triangular marks up near the committee boat, and then they will round a reaching mark, which is yellow. They leave that to the port hand side of their boat. On the next downwind, when they get to the bottom of the course, they have a choice between 2 triangular marks, the white gate marks, and then they head back upwind and they round the green mark. They leave that on their starboard side, and then they come back downwind and finish just in front of the hospitality suite between the black mark and the shore.
Okay, so it's a reaching start this afternoon. Now, it's great for the spectators because, you know, we see these guys in here a couple of times, both at both gates and, of course, at the finish line as they come really close to the beach. I mean, they're only, you know, 30 yards off the beach here. It's fantastic. But a reaching start, not easy for these. We've seen quite a few OCSs this afternoon. That's when they start early. They cross the start line too early. But still, we are just 2 minutes away from the start. Who's your money on for the next race, Nick? Who do you think is looking good at the moment?
I think it's a really big call prior to pre-start. As they get closer to the start line, I start to get a better idea on their positioning and who might do well. It has seemed to be a bit of a trend, though, the importance of the start here. In races yesterday in particular, it wasn't necessarily the boat that actually nailed the start completely that led around the top mark and ultimately led at the finish. But here what we're seeing today is those that are getting really good starts seem to be able to carry that through. They get a little bit of a break on the rest of the fleet. The way the course is structured, there are some really tight mark roundings, the first reaching mark and the bottom gate mark for the first time. We're seeing a lot of congestion, and that seems to slow that pack up and allow whoever's got the break on the fleet to extend away. And the margins that we are seeing boats lead, or the top two or three into the finish, have good margins and good sort of buffers on a pack behind that just seem to be locked together and battling it out.
And presumably it's the most windward boats that get the clear air and can get over the top and get to that reaching mark. But then, of course, they're on the outside for the mark rounding, so that's not necessarily an advantage.
Absolutely, and even looking from our vantage point, we can see that the downwind part of the line, or end of the line, actually is closer to the reaching mark. So you have a small bias there, as we call it. So there is a temptation that's always luring you to that leeward end of the line. But yes, as you say, there is this huge risk that you're going to get rolled, or your wind is going to be stolen by a boat that is closer to the wind from you.
Okay, well, we've got 25 seconds to go until the start. A big bunch up on the start line. Of course, you don't want to be early. They're pretty close to the start line there, but they all look like they're just head to wind at the moment, or just off head to wind, trying to slow the boats down. But Alinghi doing something different here, Nick.
Yeah, I like Alinghi here, where they're trying to carry a little bit more momentum. They're a tad early. They're going to have to slow up now, which is not going to be advantageous to them. Looks to me like Red Bull are having a fantastic start.
Okay, so we're just getting confirmation that they were all clear. Yes, all clear on the start line. But Nick, you are right. Look at that start from Red Bull. They've got clear air, they've got pace, they've got momentum. Looking really, really nice. Alinghi looking good as well.
Also Alinghi, yeah, as the leeward boat, they have this little clear air patch just in between themselves and Alinghi, and Red Bull, and they are making really good ground. A couple of bad waves there, slowing the fleet down. It's quite interesting to see, even though the wind is diminishing, the sea state is taking a little bit longer to drop away, which is really slowing the boats up. But it looks like Red Bull should round this reaching mark with a pretty clear lead on Alinghi. Alinghi are really struggling after those few bad waves to get their speed back again, and it looks like that's opening the door for the waves somewhat to actually roll over her.
Yeah, Alinghi pretty much stopped dead in the water at the moment. The Wave Muscat got some nice pace over to windward, clawing past Alinghi, as our GAC Pindar, as our SAP Extreme. This is really, really bad for Alinghi right now.
Absolutely, and it's the effect of that wind shadow, the blanket of breeze that the boats closer to the wind are throwing at her. She hit a few bad waves, fell into the dirty air, as we call it, of Red Bull, and then bang, slowed her down, allowed the opportunity for the wave to roll over and again blanket wind from her, and then the rest of that top four pack.
Alinghi's still struggling to get any pace there at the moment, and China Spirit coming in a little lower, a little deeper with some pace. I'm surprised Alinghi didn't just foot off there, and they've got a bit of space to do that. It's hard to see with the perspective that we're standing at the moment, but nevertheless, SAP and Red Bull Sailing Team around safely, as are the Wave Muscat, who's currently in third place at the moment. And Alinghi now made it round the mark safely. We're looking at SAP Extreme Sailing Team at the moment, who are looking to me like they're in second place. But they've done something a little different. They continued on the same jibe, just bore off a little bit and went for the late jibe. Which side of the course are you liking at the moment, Nick?
I really like where Team SAP Extreme are right now. They've carried their speed all the way beyond the mark, and they have maintained clear air the whole way through. Red Bull, on the other hand, they made a really difficult manoeuvre with the wave at that mark, which slowed their boats dramatically. And they had to sail through an area of very disturbed air. And yeah, I actually think we're going to see a really good game here by Team SAP Extreme.
Yeah, and China Spirit also following suit and heading off onto the far left-hand side of the racecourse as we're looking at. But the majority of the fleet decided to head off early and come onto the right-hand side of the course. We're looking at two of those now, Red Bull Sailing Team and the Wave Muscat. They are going to be going into a jibe soon and heading down to the gate. Now, looking at the graphics now, we can see, Nick, you're dead right, SAP Extreme Sailing Team have got a lead currently of about 65 metres. That's what the graphics are saying. They're pretty close to that gate over there, whereas Red Bull has still got a long way to go. And it looks to me like China Spirit have moved up into 3rd place, which is a really nice move from them. But we will see what happens at the gate. Now, in terms of choosing a gate, what's the thought process here?
Well, the guys actually heading downwind, they're just looking behind at this point of the race, trying to work out where the most amount of wind is. Is it on the left-hand side of the course or the right-hand side of the course? Looking from my position, looking at the guys that had like the Wave and Red Bull, just in the later part of that downwind leg, they did pick up quite strong winds. So I think that's going to entice most of the fleet to take the left-hand mark and head over to this side of the course.
Okay, so Red Bull now arriving at the gate at the same time as SAP Extreme Sailing Team. Red Bull have rounded the mark closest to us on the beach and are coming around, furling away their Jenica, the same as SAP. It's a big, big manoeuvre, though, to come around 180 degrees.
Yeah, absolutely. Red Bull had right of way there with Team SAP Extreme, and they actually pushed it a little bit more than they possibly should have, and that's going to allow the Wave actually to catch up a little bit more on that too.
Yeah, the Wave now creeping in on the inside of those two boats, and this could be a big advantage to Lee McMillan on board. But SAP and Red Bull just managing to slip away from the clutches of the Wave Muscat. We can see Lee McMillan standing up. That's the stance he always takes when he's concentrating hard, standing up and steering and looking to see where the best breeze is, where he should go. There's a lot of congestion at the bottom of the...
Through the water as he tries to turn.
So it's weight forward when you're heading upwind, and then through the manoeuvre, through the tack, it's weight back. Okay, so currently very light out on the course. Let's have a look at the graphics and see what we're looking at the moment. Right now, it's saying that the French team, All for One, are currently leading. Amazing, because they chose to go around the same gate as China Spirit, but China Spirit have just been left for dead on the far left-hand side of the course. I'm not quite sure what happened there.
It's quite amazing. We can sort of see here from our vantage point on the shoreline that China Spirit just went a little bit too far to the left and sailed into really light winds, and they just parked up, which allowed Team GAC and Lingy and All for One obviously to just sail straight past them. But both of these boats have one extra tack to do, so it will be interesting to see how they look once they complete that manoeuvre and converge again with the rest of the fleet over here on the right-hand side. And
of course, they'll then be coming into the mark on port, so they'll have to give way to some of the other boats, but we shall see what happens. This is leg 3 of 4 in race 20 this afternoon here in Nice, and it is a bit of a lottery out on the race course at the moment, a big game of snakes and ladders. I mean, we have to take a bit of a look at Alinghi, because if those boats on the far left-hand side of the course, All for One and GAC Pindar and Alinghi, come out of this well, we could see Alinghi going from the back of the fleet to, you know, possibly 3rd position.
Absolutely, as we see Team GAC Pindar now just tacking, making her final tack towards the top mark. It'll be interesting to see now how the boats converge. I do feel that the boats coming over the left-hand side of the course, they are finding it difficult to get back onto the right-hand side, so it will be interesting to see how it goes.
So the graphics saying currently that SAP Extreme Sailing Team are in the lead. No surprises there after some difficult tacks and trying to get back over to the right-hand side of the course from All for One. The Wave Muscat in 2nd place currently. I can hear whistles blowing out on the water and possibly even a red flag flying. We will wait and see, get confirmation to see if there is a penalty.
I have a feeling that incident was Team GAC and Alinghi, where Team GAC tacked on support for their lay towards the top mark, and Alinghi still maintained right of way on their starboard tack approach out on the left-hand side. And as we can see now, Team GAC Pindar exonerating that penalty turn.
So penalties, of course, having to be taken immediately out on the course here in Nice. But right now we are looking at SAP Extreme Sailing Team, our current race leaders for the 2nd race in a row. Doing a fantastic job, the Danish team. of Jens Graham Hansen and Rasmus Kostner. So remember, they're around this green mark, the triangular mark, and then back down towards us on the beach and for the finish line. And here they go. Bows rounding the mark. Jenica out. Great work on board this team. They've got a nice little lead there, Nick.
Absolutely, very, very comfortable, and they'll be super happy with this. It's a they've got quite good form here today, and we're seeing a really dramatic right-hand shift where the breeze is shifting to the right-hand side, and it's going to make it difficult for the boats that did come out of that left-hand side of the course to do well. It looks like Alinghi may not even make the top mark without having to do 2 more tacks, so that'll be very difficult for them.
Yeah, big shift, not going in the favour of All for One, Alinghi and GAC Pindar. Okay, so we are currently looking at SAP Extreme Sailing Team from Denmark leading this race. Let's have a quick look at the analytics and see the current standings as they are in race 20. SAP Extreme in first place as we thought, Red Bull Sailing Team, the Wave Muscat, Real Team, All for One, China Spirit 6th, Alinghi in 7th. That is a result that is going to hurt them.
How far do I go here?
Yeah, absolutely. Alinghi are really now struggling, and Team GAC Pindar are going to overhaul them as they roll into the top mark, all by Alinghi just not laying that mark in that wind shift today.
And if that wasn't a bitter enough pill to swallow, their rivals, the Wave Muscat, are doing everything they can to claw their way up the positions in this race, and they've managed to get from 4th to 3rd, from 3rd to 2nd, and 2nd is where I think they will finish in today's race, because we're about to watch SAP Extreme Sailing Team from Denmark cross the finish line for the 2nd consecutive race as the winners, and expect to see big jubilations and celebrations on board as these guys cross the finish line. A very emotional team, they love it. Big cheers, fists in the air. They're very happy with that. But a great result from Lee McMillan. He's really come back into this race to cross the finish line on board the Wave Muscat in 2nd place. There is the finishing gun. A good result from Lee McMillan. Of course, defending champion, top of the overall leaderboard for the 2013 series and leader of this act at the moment. Roman Agara from Austria coming across to take 3rd place on board Red Bull's sailing team. And a bit of a late charge behind them from China Spirit, but I think it's a little too late because Real Team are going to manage to squeeze ahead in 4th place, meaning China Spirit take 5th place today. In 6th place is the local team, the First Club by All for One, who come across in 6th. Definitely a game of snakes and ladders for them today. 1 minute they were at the back, the next minute they were at the front, and then ending up in 6th place. But again, not a bad result for the Invitational team. 2 boats remain out on the race course. We can see the far right-hand side of your screen. We've got GAC Pindar. And out on the race course still, Alinghi from Switzerland. Not where we are used to seeing this team. They so desperately need to close the gap between them and the Wave Muscat if they've got a chance of going into Brazil, the final act of this year's series, with a chance of winning overall. And a result like this will not help their cause. Will Tiller on board GAC Pindar coming across to take 7th place today. They had that penalty turn, of course, so to finish ahead of Alinghi is a pretty good result from them. And then finally, still out on the course. Oh, head in hands, pretty disappointed with that. Morgan Larson came out today, guns blazing, ready to do well, and so far he's had a cracking day. But this is definitely one for the shocker basket. Okay, Alinghi finish up this race, race 20 out here in Nice. As we've talked about, conditions are getting light out on the race course. We've got guest sailors out on board, so we're going to have a small gap between now and the next race while we do the transfer of guests on board. What an amazing opportunity for these guys to get out on the water, and that's what's fantastic about the Extreme Sailing Series.
And it is an incredibly unique opportunity, and right from the conception of this series, it was something that we wanted to incorporate, and it has been the most successful aspect of the event that I've seen. And we try and find analogies in other sports, and it's really particularly when it's windy, it's like dragging somebody out of the crowd and throwing them in the scrum of the rugby at the World Cup. It's just incredible. And we warn the guests as they're going on board, you're actually going into their world, into the sailors' world, and not much changes. The tempo is really high. You don't make a lot of adjustments for that VIP.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's have a quick look back at the scores as they stand after 20 races so far here in Nice. And it's the Wave Muscat that continue the charge at the top with 170 points. In second place, it's Alinghi with 150. That gap opening up all the time, Nick, 20 points. Third place, it's Red Bull Sailing Team, 142. Fourth place, it's the Swiss team, Real Team. Fifth place, it's SAP Extreme Sailing Team. Sixth place, it's China Spirit. Seventh place, the First Club by All for One. And in eighth place, it's GAC Pindar. Now, interestingly, Nick, overall, there's a big battle going on for the final podium position between SAP Extreme Sailing Team and Red Bull Sailing Team. Red Bull doing well here, and it looks like they're going to finish ahead of SAP after what was a disappointing first day. But how important is that final podium position?
Oh, it's really important. It's something that lives with you for for a long time. I always cherish that podium. It's just recognition of being part of that top pointy end of the fleet. But looking at that 20-point difference between the Wave and Alinghi,
wow,
for me that's not a huge point difference. That can dissolve over 4 races very easily. So a lot to play out for here in this event, particularly at the very, very pointy end of this point score.
Okay, well, as Nick said, just one event to go now after Nice as we head into Brazil for the final act. And there is rivalry going on. We've just heard about it between SAP Extreme Sailing Team and Red Bull Sailing Team. And here's a little more about the battle.
They've been on the circuit for a few years as well. They are sailing really well. I definitely think that we're getting very close to them. Unfortunately, we didn't get the best start. Yesterday in the strong breeze we had a damage to the boat, which forced us to pull out for some races and get the boat repaired. But we'll keep fighting and see how we can finish in Nice.
We knew them from the match racing, and they have done America's Cup campaigns, so they are good in this boat-to-boat racing. First year was maybe a little bit hard for them, but they had a steep learning curve and catching up quick now. And this year they are up there and fighting with us now.
I think we have a great team on the SAP Extreme Sailing Team, and they're all competitive guys. And I think as a unit we're just supporting each other well. Personally, I've always been a strong believer in keeping a team together. Maybe that's just my personality, that I like to be around the same guys. I think that we are a good team, but we're also good friends. And of course we have sometimes, tough times and have to sit down and talk through different stories, things that we need to improve and what goes wrong. But at the end of the day, we believe that it's important to stay together.
We always try to push each other. We always very focused on the racing now. I mean, it's a team effort, and the whole team is pushing it. Like today was a perfect example. The guys were pushing it till the end, and there was always something to catch up, and that's what the team is about.
For sure, it will be great for us to beat Red Bull again, this time in Nice. Of course, with the start that we have yesterday, it's going to be very difficult. I think we have maybe 25 points to catch up, which is going to be difficult, but it's not impossible. So what we have to do, we have to keep sailing well, and hopefully we can close down on the points.
2 teams, 1 goal. Whatever happens, it's going to be a fight right to the finish. Okay, well, there you go, the big rivalry between the Danish team and the Austrian team. But we know sailing has been at the forefront of everybody's mind over the past few weeks as we've been watching the excellent action from the America's Cup, and we at the Extreme Sailing Series are lucky enough to have some of the America's Cup sailors right here racing at the Extreme Sailing Series, and here's one of them.
Kinley, you're here sailing with Red Bull. How's it going here in Nice?
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with these guys. It's pretty good to be doing some racing again. It was a long time since I've been out on the water with a fleet, so it's good fun.
Yeah, just talk me through the last 2 days. It really has been a lot of fun, a lot more than anybody expected coming into this this week.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it's quite a change. These boats are really a handful, and you've got to learn where you can push it and where you can't, and that's been awesome for me to come back into this class, and it's great racing out there with some really competitive teams, so I'm enjoying it.
Just remind us who you were sailing here with before.
Last time I was here, I was with Ben Ainsley on Oman Air. So I've been with Oracle for the past 2 years, and just building up really to the America's Cup, and then last week or so I managed to watch all the boys come to victory. It was the best experience of my life, and also the worst at times, but we all worked really hard, and that's what it's all for really. We worked our asses off and got the end result, so you can't ask for anything more than that.
And how good to come back into some racing on this fleet with such great conditions.
Yeah, it's awesome out here in Nice. It's good to be back in some sunshine, and of course some wind and some waves. It's all different. I've been focused on the one area of water for a long time, so this is really good for me.
And it was a great day yesterday for Red Bull. I mean, you guys got 3 wins, so it's getting back into the stride of it with these. How's that been? Yeah,
I mean, we sort of struggled to find our gears on the first day, and then we had a big debrief and talked about it, and talked about what the other guys, particularly the Wave, were doing, and just really looked at our sail plan and how we were setting up, and just came out there and with an open mind, and it was working.
And you're very confident you can reach the podium here in Nice?
Oh yeah, today's going to be pretty challenging with different wind and different sea state and everything, so we're just going to have to stay open-minded. It's going to throw everything at us, so as long as we keep learning, we'll do well.
Well, we'll be watching you guys out there with interest. Thank you very much, Kinley.
Cheers.
So Kinley Fowler racing on board Red Bull Sailing Team this afternoon. We've got 2 minutes until the next race here this afternoon, race 21. For those of you just joining us from around the world, let's have a quick recap of the race course out on the water. So it's a reaching start out here just off the beach. It's not very far away. Fantastic for all the spectators that are along the promenade to watch. A reaching start. They then head across to a reaching mark, a yellow conical buoy, before heading downwind to a gate. They can choose to go around either one of there, but everyone looks pretty similar on the start line. Here we go. Is anyone going to be over? The line is clear, so a nice start from the entire fleet, actually. Red Bull again, a nice start from them. China Spirit and Real Team nearest to us in the commentary platform, looking pretty good as well, Nick.
Absolutely. Real Team here look like they've got a little bit of a jump. They were the ones that rolled across the start line with the most boat speed, but they are the most vulnerable here. If they do get rolled and their wind is taken by the boats above them, then they will get spat at the back, as we saw it happen to Alinghi in the last race.
And speaking of Alinghi, another really tricky start from them. That's not a position. They don't quite seem to have that light air mode nailed at the moment, do they?
I think it's that reaching start aspect that is not really commonly rehearsed in racing across the board. Yeah, sure, it has been very predominant in the latest America's Cup, but in most races that we generally would sail traditionally, in all other boats around the world, it's a very irregular occurrence. So we're not that well rehearsed in that reaching start technique. So yeah, easy to get caught out for sure.
And SAP Extreme Sailing Team also at the back of the fleet, having done such a good job in the last race. But we're looking currently now at the leaders, and what a surprise. It's the familiar two-tone blue sails of the Oman entry, the Wave Muscat, leading around that first reaching mark. Lee McMillan, just extraordinary. It was Morgan Larson, the skipper of Alinghi this morning, that said these guys had very little chinks in their armour. They sailed immaculately. A little bit of a slow start today, but this is the form that we are so used to seeing. They've been followed by around the mark by China Spirit, Phil Robertson, and by Jerome Clerk on board Real Team. But once again, Nick, a flying start for the Omani team.
Yeah, excellent. Really well composed. It was great to see them stand off and continue on that particular jibe away from the mark in a clear air, and hopefully for them they will be able to carry that clear all the way into that bottom mark. It was interesting to see Real Team. They jibed away early. It has been a consistent action from those that are getting rolled, those that are getting their wind stolen from the boats above them. Once they get to the mark, they have an opportunity to break away, jibe away, and escape from the clutches of that sort of bad air. So be interested to see Real Team. There's always something going on here on this side of the course where Real Team is, and it always seems to be a little bit more breeze. So it will be interesting just to see how the wave come out. But they look like they've got a fantastic angle into the bottom mark. We just hear Lee, commending his guys for the ley line into the mark. So they seem pretty happy, and I can see here visually they are just extending all the time. The angle towards the mark is probably 5 or 10 degrees better than everybody else, and they have a little bit more boat speed than everybody else. So they're going to round this bottom gate area here with a very commanding lead.
Yeah, Lee McMillan there being very vocal on board, looking around, trying to figure out what his next plan is. He's talking to his crew, looking out, pointing to where the best breeze is, pointing to what their best angle upwind as they come down to this bottom gate. They're going to round this. They have got a remarkable lead so early in this race.
Yeah, to be a very broken group of guys if they lose this race from this point. They will round with potentially even a minute ahead of Real Team.
Yeah, extraordinary. But these guys have been racing together for a long time.
Yeah, there has been some new inclusions over the last couple of years, but in general, yeah, they all have been together for a good portion of their time in the series. And it just means so much, as we've discussed previously. It's so much about trust, sailing. And when you have belief in guys, when your head's down and you're working hard, if somebody makes a call, tack now, etc., if you completely believe in it and you make that manoeuvre, you live and die with it, and you don't second guess it, you don't question, you don't sail on for another 2 boat lengths, you just roll and you capitalise. And when you have that confidence and belief in each other, 9 out of 10 times those calls are the right calls, and when they're second guessed, they turn into bad calls. So it's also moving around on the boat, knowing each other, knowing how knowing the boats themselves, gives you a great advantage.
Meanwhile, we have got a massive pile up. Yeah, absolutely. This is a wave muscat are off. I don't think anybody will be catching them in this race.
I think so, yeah. I disagree. I think it's quite
So momentum is so important here, isn't it, Nick? It's all about keeping it moving. You can see from the pictures that there's quite a lot of sea state coming in after the wind has calmed down. We've had a big couple of windy days. Look, 180 metres is their lead at the moment. And in this kind of breeze, that's a lot.
Absolutely, Hannah. And we can see here, just in the boats around us, that the guys on board boats that know a lot about the actual boat are sailing lower here and faster. They're keeping the boat rumbling. Alinghi is one that's doing that quite classically right now. And their boat speed's high, and it looks like they could even sail through the lee here of Real Team and put pressure on them as they head into the top mark. And that's all based around the experience of being in the boat for a long time. We're seeing First Club by All for One are always trying to sail a high mode in this light wind, and they're not quite getting the boat up to full boat speed. And that has a detrimental effect to your foils, the dagger boards and the rudders in each hull that give you lift. So you need to have them working, and there's a point of return in boat speed where they start to work better for you. And the guys that know where that point is, get more out of their boats.
Wait back.
Okay, so Lee McMillan just going through attack here. You can hear him calling for weight back as they go through that manoeuvre. And then the crew will be moving forward once again to try and get the back of the boat out of the water a bit in these light airs. Tricky conditions out there on the water. Not necessarily tricky because it's light, but just tricky because the change of pace from yesterday, they'd really all got into that fast mode, that heavy breeze mode. And now it's as light as it gets out there.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and you mentioned it before, where Lee spends a lot of time standing up. He is one helmsman in this fleet that does spend an enormous amount of time standing up in light winds. And it's amazing, he's not a tall guy, but even when you go from that seated position to standing position, what a broader perspective you get across the surface of the water. And a lot of people talk about how we're working with an invisible element, and that being the wind. But there are a lot of visual signs of where stronger wind is. The darker patches on the water is more agitated water by wind tension. So, you know, with Lee standing up and looking around, he has better overview of where he would like to place the boat in light wind. So it works really well for him.
So Lee McMillan unfurling his Jenica on board the Wave Muscat as he rounds the final mark and heads downwind towards the finish line just off the beach here in Nice, with an astounding lead over the rest of the fleet. So he needs to be careful. There are a few marks over to the right-hand side of the course, which he has to leave to the appropriate side. He needs to head back over towards us. You can see them. So we are with Real Team right now, but looking at the graphics, we can see the lead that the Wave Muscat have. Real Team are in second place, but Alinghi on the graphics look like they're up to third. On the water, I'm not so sure, Nick.
I think they're doing okay, Alinghi. They're obviously rolling through their final tack now on approach, which is very, very slow manoeuvre for them. And it'll be interesting to see if actually GAC Pindar lay into this top mark. If they do, they have a chance here of coming around that top mark in second place.
Yeah. They've got nice speed at the moment. They're probably just trying to take a little bit of height from that. As you say, from the perspective where we are, I'm not sure they are going to make that mark.
No, I'd go, given by the positions in which Real Team and Alinghi have tacked, it would appear to us that that GAC Pindar is what we call below the ley line, is not actually going to make that mark without having to do 2 more tacks. No,
and we can see the mark just disappearing behind their hulls, meaning that they will have to do those 2 more tacks, which is going to put them quite a way behind. But there's going to be an interesting situation here now with GAC and Real Team as GAC tack onto starboard. A very slow manoeuvre, passing very close and forcing Real Team a little bit higher up now. But who will squeeze around the mark first? Will it be Alinghi who are coming in on port, or will it be GAC Pindar? I think Alinghi will just have enough momentum just to squeeze around the outside.
Yes, Anna, especially with the tack there on GAC Pindar, they are very clearly behind with that manoeuvre. It was good to see. I thought at one point there Alinghi may not make the mark, but great to see them around in third place. And we're looking at that broader visual aspect of the overview of the course, and the Wave Muscat just have an enormous lead here as they make their final jibe manoeuvre into the finish line here.
Yep, so we're looking at pictures of the Wave Muscat representing Oman here in Nice for the penultimate act of this year's Extreme Sailing Series. Lee McMillan currently at the top of the overall leaderboard and leading this act here in Nice. And this win in this race 21 this afternoon will only help his lead out here on the water, because his nearest competitor, or his nearest rival, is still a couple of places behind him and certainly a few points behind him. So here we go, Lee McMillan, the defending champion of the 2012. But the manoeuvres are slow out here on the racecourse.
And these are the conditions where it starts to get a little bit tricky, and we start to talk a bit more about luck. Boats can be separated by 4 or 5 lengths, or 100 metres, and pick up a completely different wind vane than the boat in their nearest proximity, and the boat speeds can be varying by double. So it can be heartbreaking stuff as this wind starts to drop away.
So here comes Jerome Clerc on board the Swiss entry Real Team. A lot of mixed results from this team. 1 minute they're at the top, 1 minute they're at the bottom. And overall in the series, it's been a sharp learning curve for these guys. But here they come, second place this afternoon in this race. Good stuff from Jerome Clerc. Behind them, we'll just see the red and black sails of Alinghi representing Switzerland also. Very, very famous team, of course, notorious for having won the America's Cup or been the first European team to win the America's Cup and then successfully defend it. Morgan Larson, the American, with Anna Tunnicliffe there on the bow. You can see her, the only girl racing in the Extreme Sailing Series. So Alinghi come in and take third place here this afternoon. Anna Tunnicliffe, of course, the American Olympic gold medalist. She's also recently been crowned the 8th fittest world in the women at the CrossFit Games. So she's really mixing it up with the boys, but strength not necessarily a massive important factor today, Nick.
Not so much, a bit of a mind game today. But it was quite interesting in Cardiff when they were doing a search around for people to take on Anna in one of those ergo rowing tests, and all the guys were running for the hills. It was incredible to see. But she's an absolute machine and an incredibly dedicated athlete.
So Rome Nagara on board Red Bull Sailing Team taking 4th place. And here comes, just squeezing in front of GAC Pindar, it's Phil Robertson on board China Spirit in 5th place. The Kiwis on board GAC Pindar coming into 6th place. And it's going to be the Invitational team, the first club by All for One, who come in and take 7th place, with SAP Extreme Sailing Team coming in and making up the full complement. They go from the front of the pack to the back of the pack.
Yeah, I think I saw SAP Extreme get a penalty turn at the final downwind gate, and in these conditions to exonerate that penalty would be very taxing from a performance perspective. So I think that's where they lost a lot of their ground.
But a good performance overall from them this season. You know, they haven't been on the circuit that long. They're pretty new to it. They hadn't had a huge amount of multi-hull sailing coming into this. They've really proved themselves.
Yeah, it was interesting. This is their 2nd year in the series, and the first year was a bit of a mixed bag, and they really took it on the chin, and they said, okay, we've got to step it up here, and we're not here just to represent. We're here to actually get really serious results.
What's the plan after that?
All credit to them right from the get-go. They said, okay, we're going to take this on. We're going to give it our best, and they haven't held back. And I really love their style in the heavy weather stuff. They just cut loose, and they don't have any fear or reservation, and they actually really chomping at the bit when they're on the dock in the morning and they know it's blowing a gale outside. They just think it's their conditions, and they go out there with every focus to capitalise on it and to push everyone around. And I think that's probably what's happening with Team GAC Pindar this year. They're quite young. They feel slightly intimidated. I think that was SAP last year, and they've come into this season at Team SAP Extreme with their chest out, going, you know what, we're here to play the game, and we will certainly see that with Team GAC Pindar next year. And I look forward to seeing those guys come back a bit more mature and go away, think about it over that Christmas period and that brief break we have in the cycles between seasons in this circuit, and they'll come back and go, you know what, we belong here, get out of the way.
Okay, well, let's have a look back at the results after that last race. So at the top, after 21 races, it's the Wave Muscat, 180 points. Alinghi in second, 158. That gap growing all the time. Red Bull Sailing Team, 149. Real Team, 144. Then SAP, China Spirit, All for One, and GAC Pindar. Now, we were just talking about Anna Tunnicliffe on board, or Alinghi, apologies, on board Alinghi. She is the 8th fittest woman in the world. She's got an Olympic gold medal, and we caught up with her earlier.
Anna, what a great regatta it's been so far. Just talk me through how it's been.
Yeah, it's been great racing, very windy, very wavy, very close situations, and it's been very exciting. Today is a lot lighter. You know, probably still a little bit of a sea state out there, but I'm thinking, you know, it's going to allow for a lot more tactical sailing out there, not just boat handling and getting off the start line, but getting off the start line, making plays, and you know, being able to actually pass somebody on a tactical shift versus just making it to the next mark.
And now a few of the guys have had a few moments out there. Just talk me through some of yours.
We, I guess I would say our moment didn't actually happen in racing. We did stick the bow quite deep yesterday, inches away from capsizing, but it was good to find it outside of our race, find the limits, and it kind of calmed us down for the rest of the racing, I think, knowing how hard we could really push the boat. And so we've been quite fortunate, and the guys have done a great job around the race course to start climbing back those points.
Now, we all know how much you enjoy sailing with Morgan on board the boat. Just remind us, how's he been this regatta? Has it been cool, calm and collected as usual?
Yeah, Morgan's been great this regatta. You know, just getting us safely around the race course as fast as we can. You know, we've had really good speed out there. Got ourselves in a couple sticky situations, which has, you know, meant we had to climb back a couple of times, but we have the speed to climb back. Morgan's doing a great job keeping the boat going fast and pointing us in the right direction as well. And you know, it's a great team.
On a personal level, how do you find the conditions yourself going between sailing in huge seas and sailing in lighter stuff tactically? Do you find it easier, one or the other?
Tactically, in the big breeze, I think you approach a race with a game plan, and you're pretty much going to stick with that game plan all the way around the racetrack. There's so much going on, heads down in the boat half the time with boat handling. You know, there's not a lot changing from the original plan. When it's lighter, you know, things are changing, and you have time to respond to a change. And so, you know, it becomes a little bit more of a tactician's game when it is a lighter breeze. And I'm looking forward to maybe a slightly lighter day physically too, because it's been quite exhausting.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much and have a great day out there today.
Thank you.
So Anna Tunnicliffe there racing on board Olingi with Morgan Larsen. You know, she's an awesome sailor. She's proved herself with an Olympic gold medal. It's nice to see a woman racing in this circuit, Nick.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. And we have had a history of women in the fleet, you know, Shirley Robinson skippering a boat, etc. Caroline Brewer also skippering a boat for the first few seasons. And yeah, it is. It just shows that there is place in this fleet for women. I'd love to see a full woman team. And I have no qualm about the fact that they could do an amazing job and win races and win events and potentially win the series. So that it is awesome, particularly days like today where it's a thinking game. You know, I know from my past experience on the water, these are the days where I'm absolutely threatened by the women in terms of their processes and the way they break down the race course. Yeah, I'd bring it on, I'd say. And with that fifth man, when we originally conceived the series, it was a four-person boat race on board every boat, and now with that fifth slot, it does open it up to actually integrate, you know, other local people at your venue, or females that want an insight, or youth sailors, etc. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I will remain very quiet through all of that about women being better at thinking, but that remains to be seen out on the race course. We've got one more race here this afternoon in Nice. One more race. It's all to play for today. The teams know it. Tomorrow is the final day, and this is the penultimate act. So just 2 minutes to go now until the start of the final race this afternoon. If you were out there on the water right now, Nick Maloney, what would be your strategy? What's the plan? This is the final race. You're throwing everything you've got at it.
I've been seeing some consistency from that committee boat end, the Windward boat. So I would be looking at trying to maybe hold back at the start, try and approach the committee boat, hook around the committee boat with as much speed as I possibly could, and be one of the Windward pack. If you've got speed hitting this line with well-calculated time and distance, if you can find a gap on the line, I think you can punch a boat length ahead of the rest of the fleet in the way that they're racking up right now, and that would hopefully, you'd be able to carry that clear air all the way to that first mark. But it's easy to say standing here on the shore, and these guys are the best in the world at what they do. So I'm gathering all the congestion is there's just not enough room on that start line to fit everyone on it, so they have to be there early. They have to fight for their little square inch on that start line, and there is no room for somebody to reach in from behind and just find a gap and burst through and break clear air. So yeah, it's pretty difficult standing from here, but in the perfect world, that's what I'd be looking for. Committee boat, clear air, and obviously leading around that first mark.
Right, well, we will see who manages that. To me, it looks like the Wave Muscat and SAP Extreme have taken your advice, Nick. They look like they're trying to head up towards that committee boat end, and then they will bear away at the last minute. Just 30 seconds to go now. The danger is being caught exactly where Olingi are right now, right in the middle with nowhere really to go and not able to squeeze through to the front of the pack. We've seen that happen to them in the last couple of races, and it looks like it may well happen again. 15 seconds to go. Morgan Larsen there on board Olingi, throwing the tiller back and forth. You can see he's trying to make his move. But China Spirit here, bit of clear air, Jenica out, they're off.
Absolutely, they're going for that time on distance speed start, and it looks like it could work for them just nicely, to be honest. They have that little punch and clear air forward. If they can carry this all the way to the mark, they're going to lead here quite well.
Yeah, meanwhile, Alingi just absolutely stuck right there next to the committee boat. No speed, the Jenica's not filled. This is bad news, especially because the two-tone blue sails of the Wave Muscat are right at the front of the pack. But it's hats off right now to Phil Robertson on board China Spirit. He saw his opportunity and off he went.
Absolutely, and it looks like they're flying a hull there. So the breeze looks like it is just having that last final pulse as the sun starts to get low on the horizon. Red Bull did what we talked about, getting that committee boat, windward boat end, and it looks like they'll be a second place around this first mark.
Also, Phil Robertson on board China Spirit, just pointing a little bit higher. They had a slightly deeper start, of course. So is that helping, do you think?
It definitely does help. Angles in sailing are very, very important in terms of your ultimately achievable boat speed. So what we would say in that instance is a hotter angle with a spinnaker on in light winds is traditionally faster.
Yeah, but when it's blowing, it's an absolute disaster. Okay, so it's Phil Robertson on board China Spirit around that top mark, or that reaching mark, should I say, in first place. It's the Austrians on board Red Bull Sailing Team in second, the Wave Muscat from Oman in third. The Invitational team supported by Land Rover here, all for one, in fourth place. Fifth place round the mark is going to be Real Team of Jerome Clerc. Behind them, the Danish team of SAP. Then it's Alingi of Switzerland. And right at the back of the pack, it's GAC Pindar from New Zealand. That's how it stands at the moment. This is leg 2 of the final race here this afternoon in Nice. But we have seen before all sorts of things happening. But we've got to look at Phil Robertson on board China Spirit. A fantastic effort from them. A great start, a great first leg, and their lead is growing and growing.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how these guys cope as the leader now in this race. A blanket of pressure comes over you, and the mood and the tempo and the excitement lifts on board the boat. So from this point onwards, it's going to be interesting to see if they can hang on to that lead position, if they don't fall in a heap under their own expectations and their own pressure and their own excitement. So, but yeah, they're having a fantastic downwind leg here towards this bottom gate area. It will be interesting to see which way they decide to go. They have chosen the right-hand gate, taken them to the left-hand side of the course several times today, but it looks like now with that clear air and the opportunity that they're going to actually follow the more consistent gain second beat, which is taking the left-hand gate and heading out to the right-hand side of the course for that second leg.
So around the mark they come. Their lead extended on this downwind leg. Of course, Phil Robertson, very well known on the World Match Racing Tour, which is where he really gained his stripes, and now here on the Extreme Sailing Series. It's a fantastic project, China Spirit, really trying to incentivize and get more Chinese sailors involved. They've got a Chinese sailor on board now. They're trying to build a base in China, and it's great to see a new nation getting into sport like China are.
Absolutely, they've had some great sailing initiatives over the years, and it is awesome to see them here in the Extreme Sailing Series, to identify the Extreme Sailing Series as an iconic event that they want to be involved in as they make these bolder moves into their extension of their nation's representation in the sport of sailing. It's really interesting.
So looking across, we've got Red Bull Sailing Team who have chosen to go around that other gate, the opposite split from China Spirit. So we'll see what happens to them. We'll keep our eyes open for them. But meanwhile, China Spirit sailing right in front of us, just off the beach here, only 20 or 30 meters away from the shore, rolling into attack by the boundary. It's a little bit patchy on the course now, isn't it?
That it is, Hannah. It's interesting to see just from our position here. It looks like China Spirit are moving quite a lot faster through the water than Red Bull. Red Bull on that left-hand side of the course just seems to be really, really slow to me. It might be visually deceptive from where we're sitting, but just starting to creep into a little bit more breeze now, Red Bull. But it will be interesting to see if they are chipping away at China Spirit's lead at all.
So meanwhile, the rest of the fleet rounding that gate. We just heard from Lee McMillan. He's not happy, Will. So looking at the fleet at the moment, Nick, who do you think has done better, the guys on the right or the guys on the left? How do you think Red Bull are faring as they come into this mark? I guess it depends whether they've managed to get the lane line nailed or not. Absolutely, they really need to lay into this top mark on this tack, and they need to avoid doing 2 more manoeuvres on this upwind leg. I actually think that China Spirit has done a really fantastic job there. They've just sailed themselves a little bit further into the stronger wind out to sea, and they've made their manoeuvre now, and they're looking at their lay line into the top mark. Red Bull has speed, but I actually think that Red Bull may miss this top mark. Just looking at their angle from where we're sitting, it's very deceptive, but it looks like they might be really squeezing hard to get to that mark. So I think China Spirit are in the best shape right now. Yeah, China Spirit certainly looking more comfortable on that ley line than Red Bull sailing team. And of course, pinching up to the ley line is the last thing you want to do when sailing upwind in light breeze. You know, if China Spirit have overcooked it a little bit, at least they can foot off with a bit more pace as they come down into it. Yeah, and it looks to me like All for One could cross in front of Red Bull here. Yeah, indeed they have. There we go. So a little bit of a change in proceedings. China Spirit still lead the charge. They have hoisted their Jenica, which says to me that they're happy with their ley line as they come into this mark. One thing that is really interesting is the position of the wave. Lee and his crew have put themselves into a fantastic line of breeze up this right-hand side of the course, which has carried them right up to that green top mark. And they have one tack manoeuvre which they'll be able to execute and unfurl the spinnaker at the same time. So it will turn out to be a slow manoeuvre that will be made fast, and they're going to be second around this top mark. How do they do it? Oh, like I've heard calls from sailors before, like I had the wind on the string, and today, well, you know, this regatta and this season, they've just been so solid. And now, from that position, China Spirit are under some real threat from Lee and the team on board the wave. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be very hard for Alinghi to come back and win this regatta, let alone this whole series, after a performance like they've had this afternoon. As Anna says, it's a lot of races in the regatta, and this morning we're only halfway through the regatta, so you know we're going to be, you know, 3/4 of the way through the regatta at the end of the day. But tomorrow there is going to be a lot of points on the table. Now, all they need is for Alinghi to have, for the wave to have a broken winch or a problem with their head or something go on board the boat that really starts to restrict their ability to sail in the modes and in the configuration that they'd like to. That will really open the door for Alinghi. And as I said before, there can be 5 points a race quite easily in this fleet. So, you know, 4 races, you're 20 points closer to your opponent. So, you know, I think there's still a lot to play for. And, geez, you know, it looks like they're just so concrete. And I'd love to see a few little cracks, just to prove that they're human. They're human, yeah. It's radical just how solid they are here in these boats in this fleet on this course. Okay, so we're currently looking at the race leaders at the moment. Phil Robertson on board China Spirit. A great result for these guys. They just had a cracking start, and they've managed to extend and extend and extend. And despite that fabulous manoeuvre and tactical call from the Wave Muscat, they've managed to hold them off pretty well as they come down into the finish line. That's going to be a huge confidence boost for the China Spirit guys to have such a great start, to get in the lead, take the pressure of being in the lead, but yet never look back and hang on to it and cross that finish line. I'd be looking for some camera angle right on these guys across the line, because I hope to see some emotion. They should be stoked. Yeah, great stuff from the young team. William Wu on board, of course, the new Chinese sailor, racing with these guys. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a big hand right now for Phil Robertson. Look at that, he's waving in the air, big smile on his face. He's happy with that. A great win from them. Great stuff from Phil Robertson. Okay, second across the finish line, it's going to be Oman's the Wave Muscat, Lee McMillan. A very solid end to a great afternoon's racing for him and a great regatta so far. Just one day left to go and another second place. Great stuff from him. There they go, second place. But another solid performance from the Invitational team. They've come here, they've been thrown together. They're doing all they can to take on these guys who have raced all season in these boats. And in a similar way to China Spirit, who have only done 2 events in this series, these guys are brand new, so great third place from the first club by all for one. The Danish team, SAP Extreme Sailing Team, they won a race, they came last in a race, and here they are back in 4th place. So another good, solid result from SAP Extreme Sailing Team. Finishing 1 place ahead of their nearest rivals overall in the standings, which is Roman Agara, a double Olympic gold medalist on board Red Bull Sailing Team, who come in to take 5th place this afternoon in this final race. So just 3 boats remain on the racecourse. Jerome Clerk on board Real Team, who are comfortably going to take 6th place. Then it's the New Zealand team, GAC Pindar. And then once again at the back of the pack, Nick Maloney pulling a bit of a wincing face. It's Alinghi.
Oh, it's just simply hard to see, you know, and I think so many of us just want to see that battle for the overall win to be really super close and tight. And, you know, every one of those shockers, as we've been referring to them as being, it gets just basically puts them further away from contention. And I don't think in sport we want to see easy wins, or comfortable wins. You always like to see something go close, and that was the magic in the America's Cup. You know, within the last couple of weeks, that comeback for...
And in 8th, it is GAC Pindar. Well, that concludes racing here in Nice for today. Please do join us again. Keep checking extremesailingseries.com for times on when we will be broadcasting live tomorrow, and catch us tomorrow for all the latest action and, of course, the final day of racing here in Nice. I've been Hannah White, been joined by Nick Maloney this afternoon. We shall see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.